The single currency wasn't for us. We had a long and difficult internal debate about our joining, but we decided that it would not be in our national interest to be a part of it. What we are seeing today in the Eurozone is an illustration of why single currencies are difficult. It's not that they can't work, they've had one in the US. The US has a single currency across a vast, diverse continent. And Scotland came into a currency union with England in 1707. They're thinking about leaving it now, but for the time being it's there. To work, single currencies need certain features. A central bank that can stand behind the currency, the financial system, the deepest possible economic integration, a system of fiscal transfers and collective debt issuance to deal with tensions and imbalances. The Eurozone doesn't really have any of these at the moment, so when imbalances arise and are sustained over long periods, it can lead to serious problems. It's all very difficult. That's why the UK didn't join the Eurozone, but we have every interest in its success. After all, the EU takes 42% of our exports. The current troubles in the Eurozone, though mostly off the front pages for the time being, although I see they're creeping back, show clearly the difficult times that Europe is experiencing. We think the EU will grow by about 0.6% this year, while China grows at 8% and India at 7%. In more than half the EU states, a fifth of young people are out of work. The global financial crisis showed that we could not go on forever borrowing money from hard-working Chinese savers to buy the things that Chinese workers were making for us. The current Eurozone woes are having a chilling effect on market confidence around the world. It's not just a European backyard event. So what's Europe doing about it? Well, actually, contrary to some people's conceptions, the EU has made a lot of progress. The European Central Bank has provided extensive support to European banks. Many Eurozone countries are taking painful steps to address their deficits. In some countries, so painful are these steps that the political system itself is under strain. We've seen agreement to set up a firewall, though it needs more resources, and agreement to give up more sovereignty in a fiscal compact. But there is still more to do to win the confidence of sceptical global markets. The Eurozone must end uncertainty in Greece and recapitalise Europe's banks. Meanwhile, outside the Eurozone, Britain is tackling its biggest deficit since the Second World War. It's painful, but when our new coalition government came into power in May 2010, they looked at the books and they found that we were paying something like £125 million a day in interest. Now, this is unsustainable, so we've had to embark on a difficult programme of public expenditure cuts. It has been hard, and the road to full recovery is long, but we are moving in the right direction. Our borrowing costs are the lowest they have been in a generation, only a third of what Italy has to pay. Sorry, Italy again. And our highly competitive pound is producing significant improvement in our trade balance. Our exports to China were up 30% last year, and actually to Australia up 32%. Which brings us neatly to Australia, the gateway to Asia. The UK and the EU need to be outward looking, and they both need to look to Asia actively to seek new markets. Now, I know that you'll be covering the EU's relationship with the region in Andrea's section next, so I won't dwell on that. But the depth of the UK-Australia relationship is illustrative of the scope of our and your, Australia's, global reach. I'll try not to make this a statistics festival, but let's look at some of the facts. The UK is Australia's second largest trade services partner and also fifth largest two-way trading partner. We are the second largest foreign investor in Australia, and the UK was the second most popular destination for foreign direct investment stock and total Australian foreign direct investment for 2010, behind the USA. More than 2,500 companies from the UK and Australia do business in each other's countries every day. UK goods exports to Australia increased 32% year on year from January to November 2011. In the year to April 2011, Australia was the 9th largest investor in terms of projects, continuing its long-standing presence among the UK's top 10 investors. Now, sorry for all those trade stats, but The William Hague vision we started with at the beginning is consistent with this. As we have seen, he views British diplomacy, including what we call commercial diplomacy, to be a worldwide activity, forging relationships in as wide an arc as possible. And Australia is a key component of this for us. Our two countries have incredibly close ties, be it through history, our legal systems, our democratic values, our common love of sport and our cultural ties. And we keep visiting each other. Apart from the 1 million British passport holders who live here, nearly 2 million of our citizens visit each other's countries every year. But I mustn't forget what I said at the beginning about not taking our relationship for granted. I'm embarrassed to say that until Mr. Hague visited Australia in January last year, no British Foreign Secretary had set foot in Australia for nearly 20 years. He's now been twice, and our Prime Minister came last year. I think we've seen a dozen or so British ministers in Australia in the last year and a half, so we've upped our game with our bilateral relationship with Australia. For us, it's more important than ever in this Asian century that we deepen still further our relationship in Australia. I talked about commercial diplomacy a moment ago. One arm of that is what we are doing in Australia on the Chinese front. Now, the commercial work that we do in support of British companies exporting to Australia is one aspect of our commercial goal. But given the relationship that Australia has with China, we're now working with Chinese companies who are based in Australia, putting them together with UK companies as truly putting in place Australia as a gateway to Asia. And when you consider at the moment that we export, for all sorts of reasons, more to Ireland than we do to China, that's why we're looking this far on this side of the world at other ways that we can help our companies. Just as Australia understands the Asia-Pacific region and the emerging powers, so we have a leading role in foreign policy discussions in the EU. So it's important that we continue to talk to each other because we understand, if you like, each other's hemispheres. Foreign policy is not just about happy bilateral relations, as we've seen. It's about constructing consensus on the big global issues that require big global responses. Without this, it won't be possible to solve the big issues like international terrorism, the proliferation of nuclear material, cyber security, energy security, and climate change. It simply cannot be done in a loose set of bilateral relations. This has to be done in a complex network, and Britain sees its place in the world to be part of those. So let's not take anything for granted. Let's not rely on a few chosen relationships. Some are special, some are deep, and some are difficult, but they all count. We are both, the UK is both European and transatlantic. We're not one or the other. We have strong influence as an EU member in our own neighbourhood. We have major economic and commercial interests way beyond this, as we have seen, certainly here in Australia, which gives us a big stake in regional stability, including in North Korea, Burma and elsewhere. This is why we have a vision of global reach. My view, as a Brit down under, to revert to the title, is that we've got it about right, but we need to work hard to ensure we get the right results. And as I was told at the beginning of my stay here, never take any relationship for granted. Now I'll draw it to a close now, and I'm happy to take some questions. Thank you very much.
I'd like to open the floor for questions. Now, the Consul-General did agree with me for that he was willing to answer all questions about the United Kingdom, of course, but except for English process. So I actually come up with all those questions. Some of them obviously related to what you just heard, but if you also have other questions which are to do with UK about issues you've encountered in other contexts, you're welcome to put them. So I'd like to open the floor. Would anybody be brave enough to start with the first question? Yes. Okay, please.
I actually have a question about, sorry, I have a question about Scotland and the roadway sort of situation. You said that the UK has remained quite strong, like economically, financially, especially in the eyes of the EU in the current crisis. Do you think that if Scotland did break away, do you think that that sort of perception and strength would diminish a little bit?
It's a very good question, and I'm not sure anybody at the moment yet knows the answer to that. I understand the political reasons why the Scots want to do what they want to do. I think the question is less about whether the remainder of the UK would be as strong as I think it would. The question is sort of twofold. After that is, would Scotland be strong enough in a rather volatile global situation, particularly now, and also in a volatile Eurozone situation, although what they would do with their currency is not resolved. And the second question is, would the UK as a whole actually be a bit weaker? It kind of goes to your question. And I think there is a worry about that. Scotland has lots of resources, and lots of skilled people. I'm not sure what the figures are, but I think most Scots actually live in England and other parts of the UK than in Scotland. There's maybe even a few in the room here, I don't know. So there is certainly a concern about that, and I think I worry more about Scotland than the rest of the UK. Yes?
On news this morning, they announced Brazil just overtaken the UK as the sixth largest economy in the world. The issue for me is, given what is happening in the UK in terms of its economy, and the perceived increase in nationalism and racism in the UK, what does that mean for its role, its links into Europe?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure where it's going, so I'll take it where I want it to go. Yes, indeed, we've been overtaken by Brazil. I hadn't seen it in today's papers, but I've seen the statistics coming through. Let me put a positive spin on it, and I'm trying hard not to be a government spokesman or a politician, but you're talking us being overtaken as the sixth largest economy in the world. Well, I suspect, if you say that publicly, some people think, wow, were we the sixth biggest economy in the world? I had no idea, because the perception of the UK at the moment is that we've gone down the drain and that we don't make anything. We rely on our London financial services and nothing else, and there's really not much left. But let's just explore that a bit. Let's look at financial services in the context of the global financial crisis. Before that crisis, London accounted for 31% of global financial services. After the financial crisis, London accounts for 31% of global financial services. So it's a pretty resilient part of the British economy. But it's a fallacy to say that after that there's nothing left and we don't make anything. Sure, we're no longer in the mass-produced smokestack type industries. We went through all that in the 1980s and 90s under the Thatcher government and other governments. But we have the biggest aerospace industry